Meet the BENQ PD2730S, a new 5K display option joining a very small club. The BENQ follows Asus, Samsung, and Apple as one of just a handful of 5K displays and tries to straddle the line between performance, features, and price while focusing on color accuracy. I've been using and testing this display over the past couple weeks, so let me tell you about it and we'll see if the $11.99 price tag is worth it. But before diving into features, let's talk about why resolution matters, especially for Mac users. Because of the way macOS scaling works and Apple's preference for Retina displays, macOS design elements are expected to be a certain size no matter how big the display is. The result is a sharper image on a 5K 27-inch display compared to a 4K display at 27 inches with 1440p scaling. Unfortunately, there's been relatively few 5K options available for the last few years beyond the Apple Studio display and the Samsung Viewfinity S9 and the recently released Asus PA27JCV. Along with the 5K resolution, this display also features a 60Hz panel that BENQ says gets up to 400 nits of brightness. It has a 2000:1 contrast ratio, along with the BENQ Design View series reputation for color accuracy. When it comes to design, the BENQ PD2730S follows much of BENQ's existing design aesthetic, and I like it. The monitor has a clean, minimal design, although a bit bulkier than some other displays at this size. The bezels look like modern bezels with an all-too-common chin at the bottom, embossed with the BENQ logo. On the bottom right, you will find a multi-function key for quick selecting for things like color, KVM, or mute. There's a thumbstick for the on-screen display, and then there's a power button. On the left, there are 4 USB ports for connecting dongles, flash drives, or I guess even power up a phone at 7.5 watts, along with a headphone jack. Around back, you'll see a mostly white design with the logo at the top and a simple yet effective cable management clip that keeps cables outside of normal viewing from the front. The rear ports stick out horizontally from the display, which actually is useful for being able to easily plug in the devices and cords compared to having the ports hidden vertically. You get inputs for HDMI, DisplayPort, and Thunderbolt 4, along with a USB-C connection for a second device using the built-in KVM. The Thunderbolt 4 port can also power your laptop at up to 90 watts, which is more than enough for most use cases. But if you look closely, there's also a second Thunderbolt 4 port, which can be used for Thunderbolt devices like an SSD, or you can daisy chain a second display up to 5K resolution without running another cable to your computer. Oh, and it has a built-in power supply, so there's no big, ugly brick. As far as the overall design, I like it. It's like most BENQ displays. But if there was one thing I'd like to see updated in the overall BENQ design, it's how the frame goes around the bezels. It just leaves too much of a gap, and it's not exactly even all the way around. This leaves room for dust to settle in, and I just don't love the look of the gap. The cooler silver of the base of the stand is fairly large at around 11 inches by 8 3/4 inches, and along with the bulkiness of the display, seems to give it a solidness that I like. It's very sturdy with minimal wobble, and doesn't feel like it's going to topple over if you sneeze in its direction. The built-in stand is fully ergonomic. You get full height adjustment, tilt, swivel, and even full 90-degree rotation. Of course, the display is VESA mount compatible, so I tested out BENQ's new Ergo arm, which surprised me in a couple of ways. First, there is this reinforcement plate which actually protects your desk from damage from the clamps. Without this, desk arms can cause damage to the top of a wood desk or even break something depending on the type of material. Second, this thing is super strong and uses premium and gas springs to prevent sagging and can hold up to a 44-pound display. Third, you can get a full 360-degree swivel, allowing for almost unlimited adjustment. And finally, this is the most solid display arm I have ever tried, with very little wobble or bounce from the desk. So now let's talk about the display. I've already mentioned the basic specs like 5K resolution, 2000:1 contrast ratio, 400 nits of brightness, but BENQ is really focusing on color accuracy and consistency for the PD2730S as its main appeal. These displays are factory calibrated for a color and consistency delta E value of less than 2, which means differences in color are imperceptible. But with just an initial eyeball test for color and backlight uniformity, it looks to me like the display is actually more uniform and less blotchy than some others I have tested recently. I'm not seeing obvious bright and dark spots along the display. Checking for backlight bleed on a matte display can be difficult as you move around because of how the anti-reflection coating works. It actually looks fairly good here as well, with just 2 small areas near the bottom. And speaking of anti-reflection, BENQ's nano matte coating does about as good of a job as most matte displays I've used, and similarly looks brighter straight on compared to the sides at an angle. Now, if you move toward the sides, they seem to get brighter. There's an ever so slight rainbow or grain on white and gray backgrounds with this nano matte coating, maybe slightly less than what I saw on the 5K Asus, which I also reviewed and will leave a link below. And because the backlight bleed was actually less than what I saw on the Asus, I was less distracted by errant lighting in the margins when watching letterboxed videos. But of course, I want to dig in a little bit deeper on this display. So running my standard display analysis test I use for each of my displays with the display in default settings, I saw some disappointing numbers like P3 color rating of 96 compared to the stated 98%. I saw a maximum brightness of just 267 nits and a contrast ratio of just 650:1. Those numbers seemed really low, so I asked BenQ, and they informed me that if you actually move out of a predefined color mode into a full user mode, you can disable the uniformity setting that will unlock higher numbers. So I changed from default P3 display mode to custom user mode and reran my tests, and this time came back with a P3 rating of 100%, brightness of 499 nits, which is higher than the specs, and a contrast ratio of 1490:1. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why don't they just disable the uniformity setting by default, or why do they even have it? Well, it comes back to consistency for the Design View series. See, when I disable the uniform setting, the backlight can get brighter, but it actually shows much greater range across the panel, making for a less accurate display. And because these displays are tailored to professional designers or photo or video editors, consistency is more important than absolute brightness. Now, that doesn't mean that the display is only for professional designers, because out of the box, the AQ Color technology gives you a great experience with the ability to choose predefined color modes, or even the MBook mode, which easily matches the color of your Mac without needing to do anything. But if you are a professional designer, BenQ gives you all the tools to get the display calibrated exactly how you want it using the Palette Master Ultimate software. It's basically a plug-and-play calibration if you're using a colorimeter like the X-Rite or Spider. And yes, it works with Mac. You can either select a specific calibration setting like web design or cinema, and then it will walk you through the calibration process and leave you with a perfectly calibrated display based on industry standards. If you're just needing to eyeball two different displays, you can also use Display Color Talk, another BenQ tool, for matching color on two different BenQ displays or matching with your internal MacBook display without a calibration tool. One of the great things about the Apple Studio display is how it just integrates with the Mac and you can control brightness and volume from the keyboard. With BenQ, there is the optional Display Pilot software that allows for on-screen controls of things like brightness, speaker volume, and other settings. There are two parts to the app. There's the menu item and the settings window. The menu gives you quick access to change things like the brightness, the volume, the color mode, enable dual view, or picture-in-picture. The settings window lets you configure what shows in the menu items, and to enable on-screen controls, in Preferences, click on Brightness and enable iKeyboard control. And now you can control the brightness and volume using the keyboard controls, but you need to have the cursor on the correct display. The BenQ overlay does look a little bit off when you're changing your volume or brightness because it's trying to look somewhat like the macOS pop-up, which it isn't, but it works. If you want something similar, you're just looking for basic software control of the brightness and speakers, there's a free utility you can get called Monitor Control, which works with BenQ, Asus, and other displays. Okay, I got just three other things to touch on, and that is the speakers, the hotkey puck, and the sleep-wake time. There are two 3-watt speakers built in, and they are predictably bad, like every other display. If you're set on using a display that has built-in speakers, there's really only one decent option out there, and that's the Studio display. The BenQ Hotkey Puck is a wireless control which you can configure to customize keys to adjust color mode, KVM inputs, or launch apps. The rotational dial can be used to control the screen brightness, contrast, or even the volume. It's a decent little accessory that comes with the display, but I'm not sure how much I'll actually use it because once I have my settings set on my display, I pretty much leave them alone. And finally, sleep and wake time with this display is decent. The display goes to sleep quickly, then after a few seconds, it starts an auto scan or a countdown if you have auto scan turned off. I don't know why it needs a countdown, just go to sleep and stay asleep. Wake up with this display is quick at about 3 to 4 seconds, which is much faster than some other displays out there. So, how does the PD2730S fare against the competition at a price of $1199? It falls right in between the Asus PA27JCV at $799 and the Studio display at $1599. However, the Studio display has been going on sale frequently for $1299, and even the 5K Samsung Viewfinity S9 has been on sale for $699. If we compare it against the Samsung and the Asus, the BenQ has better backlight uniformity in default P3 modes, and even when the BenQ is in user mode, but the max brightness and contrast are not as high as those two options. The Samsung has a better overall design in my opinion, but the BenQ has Thunderbolt 4, allowing for daisy chaining a second 4 or 5K display. The Studio display has the best design, hands down. It has great speakers built in and an okay webcam. It integrates with macOS automatically and instantly wakes and sleeps. Although there is only a single input with Thunderbolt, no KVM, no pass-through for a second display, and the contrast is not that great at 950:1. Oh, and if you want a height adjustable stand, that's another $400 at least. In my opinion, if 5K resolution and display uniformity is the most important thing to you, the BenQ or the Studio display is the way to go, and you can decide if you want to spend more on design and a couple other features. If price is the most important factor along with 5K resolution, I would look for the Samsung Viewfinity S9 to be on sale because it performs about the same as the Asus, but has a better overall design. And last, if you just want a good display that looks like it belongs with your Mac and you don't really care about 5K, then the BenQ MA270U is perfect for everyday Mac use, and I'll leave a link to my review down below. So that's the PD2730S. We now have another option for 5K displays available, so what do you guys think? Is that the one to get, or are you looking at one of the other options? Let me know in the comments down below. Also, if you're looking for a direct comparison with the Studio display or the Asus 5K and want to see a video on that, I'll see what I can do. Until then, you can check out my review of the Asus right over here. It's right there. Hit the thumbs up button if you liked it, hit subscribe if you want, and I'll see you next time.